That's what I was afraid of, and he's starting to get him. So let's see.
Yeah, I didn't end up voting. I just did like the prop stuff. I didn't vote anybody on president.
Yeah, I put undecided.
Yeah. Well, today's a big day for America, and I'm not talking about the election. It was the NFL trade deadline today. We saw a few moves happen. We'll talk about a little bit of everything, but the Niners coming off their bye week, 4-4, obviously, and there was some Niners news today that we got to get into for sure. And we'll talk about Christian McCaffrey, John Feliciano coming back. Today the Niners did make a trade. We already got a comment. Let's see. No, he said now we want the politics. We won't get into the politics of the country, but we'll get into the politics of the 49ers for sure. How about that?
Yeah, for sure.
But no, we like I said, definitely a lot to talk about with the 49ers, as there always is, especially on a day like today, like I said, where NFL trade deadline came. So we'll start by talking about that. Yep. The Niners made a trade today. They acquired Khalil Davis, a defensive tackle from the Texans, for a 7th round pick. Not a big, splashy move, not a sexy move or anything. Just a move to kind of get them some depth right at the D tackle position, which never hurts. It seems like the Niners were content with the roster that they have, and they know they got guys coming back, right? Reinforcements are on the way over here in the next couple of weeks. So what were your thoughts on the Niners just standing pat, kind of just making a minor move today?
Well, if you look at it from a perspective of, IR and all that kind of stuff, like we have potentially 6 players coming back from IR. Obviously we have, the biggest one, in my opinion, obviously is CMC. He's coming back from IR. Dre Greenlaw is the second one. So if you look down the list, Jake Moody and some other folks that are coming back from IR, Talanoa Funga and Gross Mato. So this is going to be big. I mean, if we can get CMC back this week, it'll be huge for the offense. Dre Greenlaw, hopefully we get him back week 12 or week 13. So let's see. I mean, I think no big move is probably the best move for this team right now, considering the fact that we have so much talent on offense and on defense. Everyone's just been hurt. Obviously, Ayuk and Hargrave being out has been really big for this team the first 8 weeks. So, but the fact that we get so many guys back from IR, it should bode well for us, and it's kind of like making a big trade in all honesty.
Yeah, the Niners have had a lot of guys banged up, a lot of guys on the IR, as you mentioned, and they didn't really have a major need to go out and get a player at any given position. Yep. There's things that can just be improved internally with guys coming back, right? A lot of people were hoping that the Niners were going to make a move for a wide receiver. I didn't think there was a need for that, considering Juwan Jennings is back this week. Ricky Pearsall has been getting ramped up more. Jacob Cowing, we saw him get a little bit more involved in the offense too. Like you mentioned, Christian McCaffrey is coming back soon, and so on the offensive side, so they're doing okay. We'll see. Health is the most important thing. And then around the league too, we saw the Rams. They traded Tre'Davious White to the Ravens. The Ravens continue to go all in.
Big move.
Big move for them. Good for the Niners too. A corner like that is out of the NFC West, and we still got to play the Rams one more time. So was good to see him get out of the division. And then the Lions getting Zadarius Smith from Cleveland. They didn't make the big splash by going for a Max Crosby or a Myles Garrett, but Zadarius Smith still a good veteran lineman. And the Lions, as we've talked about, are the biggest competition for the 49ers in the NFC. So that was definitely a good pickup for them as they go all in. Yep. But let's talk about, we talked about the Niners, Christian McCaffrey, right? Also John Feliciano. Both of their practice windows opened up on Monday. Juwan Jennings expected to be back. We know Christian McCaffrey obviously is going to have a big impact, which we'll get into too. But, we can't discount John Feliciano coming back and helping out this O-line, because as great as Purdy has been at scrambling this year, extending plays with his legs, running for first downs, we don't want to see him doing that every single time. So kind of an underrated thing that people aren't talking about, right? Feliciano coming back.
For sure. I mean, we talked about it earlier this week, right? If Feliciano and Dre Greenlaw finish that game against the Chiefs, it's a
Yeah.
blowout for
Hmm.
sure, right? Like there's no way that the Chiefs that year contend with the Niners without two of the most important cogs on offense and defense. I think people forget how important Feliciano was on the offensive side of the ball for, not only run blocking, but for
Pass
pass blocking
protection.
as
Yeah.
well. And we missed that on pretty much the second half of the game when he got hurt.
Hmm.
Once they put in, I think it was Burford or Banks, if I'm not mistaken. It was one of those two guys that came in on protection
Hmm.
in the second half. If we have Feliciano on some of those third down passes in the end zone, I'm pretty sure we would score a touchdown. We would win that game, right? So,
Yeah.
getting Feliciano back is going to be huge for this team for sure. But obviously, the one that's the biggest is CMC. I mean, he's the one that makes our offense go. He's the one that creates double teams, in the red zone. So it's going to be really important to get him back healthy, especially with being with Brandon Ayuk being out. Um, I'm looking forward to see like how Kyle Shanahan like implements this three-headed monster that we have at running back with Grando and Mason, and obviously with CMC. So it's gonna be exciting. I mean, we have everybody coming back, at the
Hmm.
right time in the second half of the season. The biggest piece, obviously, on defense is if Drake Greenlaw comes back like healthy and whole. But on the offensive side of things, if we can get Christian McCaffrey back this week and Feliciano back next week, it'll be huge for us.
Let's talk about CMAC because we know what this guy's about, right? Last year, over 2,000 total yards. When you look at his rushing yards and his passing yards, right, or
Yep.
receiving yards, sorry, 21 total touchdowns, which I think was leading the NFL for all skill position players. I think he had like 73 receptions, so
Mm-hmm.
67 receptions. Sorry. So really, we know what Christian McCaffrey is about. Offensive Player of the Year last year. I expect that they're going to ease him into it. You're not going to see him getting obviously 20 to 25 touches in his first game back. It might be something more like 10 to 15 touches for the first couple of weeks as they continue to ramp him up, right? But
Yep.
just him being out there, the impact that he's going to have, right? Even as
Yep.
whether he has a ball in his hands or not, just as a decoy, him running out to the flat on the right, running out to the flat on the right or the left side of the field, like for these fake screen passes, fake handoffs, whatever it is, he's going to be a threat. And even if he's just used as a decoy, right? And
Yep.
you mentioned, the red zone offense, having him there too is going to be very big. So, what impact do you think he's going to have? And because this is the Niners team that like right now is averaging 159 rushing yards per game, which is fourth in the NFL. And they've been doing that with their second and third string running backs. And now
Yep.
you're getting Christian McCaffrey back, right? The red zone offense has obviously been a struggle. They're about 49% when it comes to scoring touchdowns. That's 28th in the NFL. So they still continue to rank the bottom there. I think that's going to be one of the biggest areas where he's going to help out. But what do you think? Where's the overall impact of McCaffrey coming back here?
I mean, if you look at it the last 2 years, right, like we see what kind of impact Christian McCaffrey has on the offense. He commands double teams in the red zone. We're 28th right now. Sandeep, I want to ask you, if we had Christian McCaffrey the entire season, what would we be right now in the red zone?
In the red zone, we'd probably be top 10.
Exactly. I think top 5, to be honest, because of the fact that, defenses hone in on him in the red zone. They know he's the number one threat to like score a touchdown or like to score or to like have a big gain in the red zone. He's the number one threat for sure. It isn't Brandon Ayuk, it isn't Deebo Samuel, it isn't Brock Purdy, it's Christian McCaffrey. He's the one that makes everything else go. So I'm really excited to see that. Obviously, one, he's healthy right now, right? Whatever he did in Germany, like it worked wonders. I don't know what kind of like shit they put into his Achilles, but it must be some shit that obviously the United States doesn't approve. But
some of that German beer, probably.
some of that Oktoberfest, right? But I'm excited. I really feel like this team can finish top 10 in red zone offense to end the year if they get Christian McCaffrey back against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So we'll see. I mean, we know what CMC is about. We know how Brock Purdy performs when CMC is in the lineup. So it's gonna be interesting to see, how the team finishes. Obviously, I told you over the weekend we need to finish at least 11-6 to win the division. After everything that happened on Sunday, 11-6 is probably the minimum. But if we can get to like 12-5 or 13-4, that'd be a big plus.
Yeah, it'd be huge for sure. We'll get into the remaining schedule for a little bit, but definitely it's going to be helpful to get Christian McCaffrey back if he does, in fact, play on Sunday against the Bucs. And the Bucs, as depleted as they are at the wide receiver position, we saw last night they went toe to toe with the Chiefs and nearly came away with a win. Should have went for 2 in that game. Probably that was the talk of the town today, right? I'm sure Todd Bowles was regretting that today, but. The Bucs are not going to be an easy team to beat. Baker's been playing really, really well this season. He's going to be in for a big payday in the offseason too, after getting
for sure
a contract, a year ago also. But so the Bucs will definitely present their challenges for the Niners with the guys they have, especially in the run game too. But yeah, hopefully getting C-Mac this week will be helpful. I want to shift gears here a little bit because the Niners 4-4 going into the bye week and coming into week 10 now. What's something that you've been impressed with through the 8 games? Yes, that's been a struggle. The Niners should be 6-2 as we've talked about, their inability to close out a couple of those games. So what do you think is there, what have you been impressed with, even though there's like a lot of downsides, which we'll get into next, but what's something you can take away and be like, this is an area where I'm actually surprised or I've really been impressed with?
I mean, honestly, like the fact that they haven't won back-to-back games makes it really hard for me to like decipher like how the season's gone, right? But I think the fact that we have a quarterback in Brock Purdy has been the most impressive. Obviously, like he's made mistakes in some of the big games for us this year, especially against the Vikings and obviously Kansas City. We can't ever get past Kansas City for some reason, but that game was probably like one of the worst of his career. But the fact that we have a quarterback that shows up in big moments when it's needed the most with the least around him, which has been the case this year. His offensive line has been below average. He hasn't had a star running back this year. His wide receivers have been in and out of the lineup, includes Debo, includes Ayuk, includes Jennings. The fact that he's still 3rd ranked in Pro Football Focus in all of the NFL just tells you how much of a baller he is. And I feel like people criticize him a lot, but for what he's had this year to work with and the fact that, yes, they are 4-4, they should be 6-2. But I feel like Purdy did enough in the games that they lost to help that team win outside of the Kansas City game. I feel like he did enough in the Rams game. He did enough in the Cardinals game. He did enough even in the Minnesota Vikings game. His worst game literally has been the Kansas City Chiefs game, and that's because they had a great game plan, and our offense was not up to par with their defense that day. That's just plain and simple. But outside of that, I think Brock Purdy is having a phenomenal season. If they were 6-2, he would probably be in top 3 in MVP consideration. But unfortunately, we blew 2 games to the Cardinals and to the Rams, which they should have won, and they would have won if they would have had CMC, to be honest, because, Brock Purdy is great, but our closer is Christian McCaffrey. No matter what you say, our closer on offense is Christian McCaffrey. It's really hard to go against it, but I feel like, obviously getting CMC back, like they'll have like an improved sense on offense, and then Dre Greenlaw obviously on defense is really important for us too. But the biggest takeaway, obviously outside of improvement, is Brock Purdy. He's been balling this year. He's top 5 in almost every statistical category. So I'm excited to see what he does with CMC, with a healthy offensive line and hopefully a healthy defense.
Yeah, we can't really, aside from the Chiefs game, like you mentioned, it's hard to knock, Brock Purdy, right? Because for the most part, yeah, he has played really well this season. We know the Rams game is a game they should have won, and he threw hell of a pass down there. Unfortunately, Ronnie Bell couldn't come up with it right, or the Niners win that game. The Arizona game, they had it in the bag too, and that was the game that Purdy did play well in also. So if the Niners are 6-2 right now, there's definitely like a different conversation.
Sure.
People just look at the one game against Kansas City and say, "Oh, he had 3 interceptions. He can't play well against the top teams and whatnot." Which we talked about last week, right? Is definitely an area he's going to have to step it up, especially as this second half of the schedule comes around and they play some better teams. But for me, one area I've really been impressed with, or a couple of areas, is one, as I mentioned, the run game. For not having McCaffrey, the reigning offensive player of the year, to still average 159 rushing yards per game has been incredible. You're talking about doing this with Jordan Mason and also a rookie running back in Isaac Guerrero, right? Mason fills in great for the first handful of weeks, and all of a sudden he's starting to deal with some pain with his shoulder. Here comes Isaac Guerrero putting up 90 or 100 yards last week against the Cowboys, right? Had about 80 yards, I think, in the couple weeks prior to that, before the Chiefs game against the Seahawks. So, they've done a really good job filling in, admirably with Christian McCaffrey out. And, also I got to commend the secondary. This Niners secondary is fairly young. When you look at guys like Diamador Lenore, Jair Brown, with the rookie who stepped in, what's our rookie cornerback's name?
Renardo Green.
Renardo Green stepped in, right, for a game, with guys like Hufanga out and whatnot, Mooney out. So, our secondary has been pretty solid, I think, this year. And it's nice that we have a young core of players in that secondary that are hopefully going to be around and will continue to get better. I mean, Lenore, man, he's been one of the best corners in the whole NFL this year. He's done a really good job against the top players. So it's been really, really rewarding to see, because I feel like that's always been an area where the Niners have struggled. There's still room for improvement. Don't get me wrong. I would like to see them tighten up their coverage. And then I think our pass rush could be improved too. It's an area where the Niners have struggled a bit.
I feel like we've been talking about the pass rush for at least since 2021. Like, they're gonna be way better, and it's because we lost DeForest Buckner. Obviously, like D Ford, like those guys, right? Like, they were huge impacts in 2019. It felt like in 2019 we can get a sack like every other play. Like, that's how good that defensive line was, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, on the defensive side, like you mentioned, the secondary, like, it's been very impressive, especially considering that Charvarius Ward has been below average this year. And obviously, we found out this week he was dealing with some personal issues. So, like, prayers up to him and his family. Obviously, like, he's going through a lot right now, and his head wasn't in the game, obviously. But the fact that, the secondary has performed, they're still a top 10 secondary in the NFL. Damn near top 5, if I'm not mistaken, in terms of statistics. Like, we don't give up big plays for the most part. Diamador Lenore, like you said, like, he might be one of the top 5 or top 10 cornerbacks in the NFL right now, the way he's been playing. So, huge shout out to the secondary for holding their own. If the pass rush were to get to the quarterback, I mean, the secondary would be like top 3, top 2, right? So.
Yeah, maybe if Trump wins the election, Nick Bosa goes off for like 40 sacks the rest of the season. We'll see.
I'm going to counter right now. Nick Bosa's going for 3 sacks the next game against Baker Mayfield. So.
Oh, that's true. He doesn't like Baker either. So
he doesn't like Baker.
More fuel to the fire for him. Yeah, we'll see what happens. That could be, maybe that'll get Nick Bosa going in the second half. But like that kind of prompts the question, right? What's the biggest area of improvement that the Niners need? And for me, it is the pass rush, right? It's an area where, like you said, they've been, we've seen a couple of years where they were really, really dominant. That just hasn't been the case this year. Right now, they're only, they rank 16th in the NFL in sack percentage at 7.14. And Nick Bosa is getting the pressures, as we've talked about. He's not always finishing the job. Leonard Floyd is a guy, hopefully he steps it up, because he hasn't been living up to this contract that we gave him. It's not like it was a huge contract, but it was a big signing, right? When we saw the name Leonard Floyd, we were expecting big things from him, and so far that hasn't been the case. Right. Obviously, Javon Hargrave going down has definitely been like a tough loss for them.
Big loss.
Getting Matters Gross back will be big for them too, because he was playing well before he got hurt. Yep. But the guys are going to have to step it up, the second half of the season, as we mentioned, because the schedule only gets harder. So for me, the pass rush is where I really want to see this team step it up. What about for you? I mean, I know you talked about the red zone offense. Would you say that's the biggest area for them?
Bro, you got to be able to score points.
We can't keep selling for fucking field goals, man. I don't think anything pisses me off more during Niner games than just we come down, have a good 5-6 minute drive, and it's like, all right, 3 points, that's it.
It's not even selling for field goals. Like, bro, we've been through 3 fucking kickers this year.
Yeah.
Like, you can't trust any of them at this point, right? In terms of like health, in terms of being like accurate. Like, last year we were like I think number 2 or number 3 in red zone or number 1 in red zone offense last year, and obviously everything went right. There was no major injuries, obviously up until the Super Bowl, but the offense has to improve. Like Kyle Shanahan is an offensive coach. If shit doesn't go right on offense, we're fucked. That's literally how it goes, right? And if history will tell you anything, if our offense isn't going well and our defense is struggling, we're going to lose games.
Yeah.
And this year, our defense has been mid to low for the most part. Our offense has been top 5, but our defense hasn't showed up. So we're moving the ball. We're not scoring in the red zone. And I think that's where Christian McCaffrey, obviously, hopefully he comes back this Sunday and we get more pieces this Sunday and everything comes to fruition. But
do you think we'll see Kyle Shanahan be more aggressive on fourth downs, on 4th and goal situations in his play call? Like, will he go for it more now that Christian McCaffrey is coming back?
100%, because the two guys that he trusts on offense is Christian McCaffrey and Juwan Jennings, and both those guys have been out the last couple of weeks.
You can make the case for Kittle too. Kittle's been really good this year.
Kittle's been good, but that's de facto, right? It's because Christian McCaffrey's been out. Obviously, Brandon Ayuk, prayers up to him. Hopefully he gets better soon, but he's been out the last couple of games, and he hasn't performed. He didn't perform up until,
aside from one game.
One game, which is the Arizona game, and they still lost. But that was for different factors, obviously. But, obviously George Kittle, in terms of a pass catching situation, he's been our best player. After that, it's Juwan Jennings. And after that, you can make the case that it was probably Deebo Samuel. But, once his offense is whole outside of Brandon Ayuk, if we get Feliciano back next week, if we get Christian McCaffrey back next week, I expect this team, if they stay healthy, to be a top 3 offense to finish the season. And you can quote me on that for sure. They will be a top 3 offense if Juwan Jennings, Christian McCaffrey, and Feliciano finish the season healthy and whole through the regular season. And I told you on the weekend, we have to be 11-6 to win the division. We'll be lucky to make the wild card at 10-7 because of how competitive the NFC is this year.
What do you think about this Rams fan, obviously biased here, saying the Rams are winning the West? Look, the Rams have played well. I will definitely give them credit for that. I can't take nothing away from them, especially with the injuries that they've had to their receiving core. Their offensive line was depleted to start the season. They've been playing well, but the Niners are getting healthy, and I think getting your guys back, especially key guys, as the season progresses, really, really plays out in the Niners' favor. And let's look at the Niners' remaining schedule here. So the Bucks, Seahawks, Packers, Bills, tough, obviously. And then you got the Bears, Rams, Miami, Detroit, tough game, and then Arizona. Now, realistically, I think the Niners probably go. Honestly, I think they can go 6-2 during this stretch.
For sure.
They're not. If they swept it, that would be crazy. I'm not going to say I expect that at all because, again, Bucks are going to be a tough game. It's a game the Niners should win. We should cruise past the Seahawks. The Packers is going to be a tough. I wouldn't be surprised if the Niners lost to the Packers. At Buffalo, that's a really, really tough place to play, especially in the winter. That's going to be a cold game for the 49ers. We know what Josh Allen's been doing this season and how good that defense is in Buffalo. So I wouldn't be surprised.
He's the MVP.
Yeah, I agree. He's right up there. Lamar is probably right there with him too, but Josh Allen's been playing at a really high level this year. That's going to be tough. The Bears is a game they should win. I expect the Niners to get their revenge on the Rams the second time around.
For sure.
They should beat Miami. Detroit is going to be a tough game. I wouldn't be surprised if the Niners lost to Detroit.
They're going to lose that game for sure. Yeah,
and then Arizona, they should hopefully win that game. Although Arizona has been playing well, also, and they beat the Niners once. So you're looking at 6-2, maybe 5-3, depending on how these games against the Packers, Bills, and Lions go. If they can take one of those games against those 3 opponents, then there's a good chance they finish the second half 6-2. Would you agree?
Yeah, for sure. 6-2 is minimum because of where they finished the first half of the season, which was 4-4. I think to win the division, 10-7 is minimum. 11-6 would probably be great. But the most important aspect is that they still get to play their division the second half of the season, which is really key because, I mean, we see the NFC West this year. Arizona is leading the division, and nobody thought that, going obviously into like week 9, that Arizona would be the top of the division. You obviously have the Rams, which are 4-4 right now. Seahawks are still there at 4-5, and the Niners are in third place at 4-4. So I told you this last week. If they win all their divisional games, if they split between the Packers and the Bills, and if they beat the Dolphins and the Bears, they'll win the division. They'll go 11-6, which is comfortable enough to win the division, in my opinion. I don't think Arizona is going to beat the Jets next week. I think they're going to lose that game for sure. I think the Jets have a renowned sense now that they figured out everything on offense and defense. Hopefully they can go on a run as well. They have some of the same teams that we need to play in terms of our division to help us, right? So I think that from our perspective for the Niners, if they can go 6-2, obviously go 10-7 or 11-6, they'll definitely win the division. It might even be enough to get the second seed in the NFC because you look at the NFC North, it's pretty tough right now. Like Minnesota's not a lock to win. Obviously Detroit, they're in the lead for the division right now, and they still had to play in Minnesota one more time in their own home field. So it's gonna be tough. I mean, they could get the second seed, but it's most likely third or fourth seed.
Realistically, it's probably going to be between that 3 to 4 mark because obviously, like we know the Lions, like you said, and the whole NFC North is good with the Vikings right there, the Packers right there. And that's why that game against the Packers is going to be very crucial too. And same with the Lions, right? Because, hey, who knows? Maybe the Lions second half of their season, maybe things get a little bit harder and, that game could be a tiebreaker for sure. But it's not just those teams right in the NFC North. The Commanders are 7-2, and they just made a big move today too, getting Marshawn Lattimore from the Saints, and then I know we had the Eagles number last year, but they're 6-2, and I don't want to take them out because we know that team has a lot of weapons on offense. Saquon's probably the favorite for Offensive Player of the Year right now.
He's changed their team so much. Oh my God! If they didn't have Saquon, they'd probably most likely be 4-4.
Yeah, I mean, when they acquired him, there was analysts who were saying that Saquon's going to have the same kind of impact that Christian McCaffrey had on the 49ers. And honestly, at the time, I was like, I don't know, like Christian McCaffrey was, is a different beast, but you know what? Saquon is also a different beast, and he's played really, really good. He's opened up the offense. Jalen Hurts had some struggles the first couple of games, but he's really picked it up too. And it's been a touchdown machine for the last 2 to 3 weeks. So realistically, like I said, the Niners are probably going to be that 3 to 4 range. Falcons are 6-3 also. They're playing good, and they have a pretty soft schedule. So it wouldn't be surprising to see them kind of stay up there. But the Niners handle business, win their division, whether it's 10-7 or 11-6, whatever. They should be in the spot to get the 3 seed, which would be huge because then they'll get a home playoff game, and that's all you can ask for, going into the playoffs. So, we got reinforcements on the way, like we mentioned. Christian McCaffrey coming back, John Feliciano coming back soon, Jawan Jennings, and then we'll see guys like Dre Greenlaw eventually return, Talanoa Hufanga. So there's no excuses for the 49ers if their guys are on the field, right? You're getting your players back. You didn't make any moves aside from getting Khalil Davis, right, as we mentioned. So it's really all up to this team. Can they shake off the first half of the season, learn from their mistakes, and now just go out there and execute? This is a team we've seen over the last few years that sometimes has started off their season slow, but then have turned things around in the second half of the season. And it just comes down to, I think, the mental edge is like the biggest thing. Can this team lock in?
If we know anything about the Niners, it's always about the mentals. Like, I think 2 years ago in 2022, when they started off 3-4, they acquired Christian McCaffrey, and they won. After that Chiefs game, they won 8 straight, and they finished the season 13-4. So, if they can somehow figure out a way to rekindle that, obviously, it's going to take a lot because this team's a lot older.
Yeah, it's kind of like they just acquired McCaffrey again.
You just acquired McCaffrey again. You just acquired Feliciano again. you just acquired Dre Greenlaw again. These guys have not played the entire season. They bring an entirely different dynamic that the Niners have been missing all season long, especially on the offensive side of the ball, right? Like Feliciano was so huge for us going into that Super Bowl. And I will stand by this. The Chiefs would have lost that Super Bowl if John Feliciano would have finished that game.
Same with Greenlaw.
Sure.
Same with Greenlaw.
Same with Greenlaw. Like if they were healthy and whole, like the Chiefs were, they would have won that game for sure because they had everything going for them up until the point that those two guys went down. Mm-hmm. So it's going to be a huge boost to see those guys on the field again, asserting their dominance like we know in the trenches on the offensive side and the defensive side of the ball. So I'm really excited to see like what this team can be going into the playoffs. Because look, the way the schedule is set up, we have a pretty easy schedule considering everything that's happened in the first half of the season. Like we thought that some of these games would be tough. Obviously, we thought that the Bears would be tough, the Dolphins would be tough, but these look like winnable games right now because of where those people are or where those teams are at in their season. If they can sweep the division, which I think they can, and if they can win the Dolphins and the Chiefs game and split between the Packers and the Bills, we're in a really good position to make a run in the playoffs.
Yeah, you know what the Niners have been missing on both sides of the ball. On the offensive side, it's not just what C-Mac does, right? But like when he makes a play where he rips off a 20-yard carry here or like gets a reception and 37 yards there, it jolts that offense, right? You see the whole sideline get hyped, the fans get into it, and it just gives this different dynamic and like sense of energy to the team that they haven't had in the first half of the season, right? We've seen Kittle make big plays, obviously. Debo's had some moments here and there, but like no one has that explosiveness like a Christian McCaffrey. And so it's not just what he does when he has the ball in his hands, but just like the impact of that play too. I think that's going to be a big thing to get that offense going. And on the flip side, Dre Greenlaw, right? Fred Warner is, arguably their best defensive player, which is crazy when you talk about having a team like you have Nick Bosa on that side too, who literally won Defensive Player of the Year a couple of seasons ago, right?
Fred Warner.
But Dre Greenlaw is the emotional leader of that defense, right? We see him on the sidelines over there talking shit to the opposing team, pushing the coach from the Eagles, getting into it with guys. Sometimes he gets flags for it too, but he still brings that energy and the toughness to that defensive side, which is going to be a huge boost. And you already know if anyone's waiting for him to come back, it's Fred Warner. We saw his reaction when Dre went down in the Super Bowl. He was heartbroken, So him having those guys are like Batman and Robin out there on the field for the 49ers. And so, their play is going to be huge, but also just the emotional impact and that those guys have is going to be a really big jolt for the 49ers in the second half of the season. So it's exciting right now for the 49ers. I feel optimistic, probably the most optimistic I've felt, all season as a Niners fan, because we're getting all these guys back at the right time. And this is our chance. Got to go on a run here. Really got to lock in, like I said, mentally. If this team can come out and make a statement against the Bucs, get a good win, continue to get these guys back, I think we can see them go on a patented 49ers run over the last 8 games.
Yeah, for sure. And, just harping back on those guys that we're going to get back, was there any moment last season where you felt like the Niners were going to lose a game? Like every single week. There was never a moment where you felt like they're going to lose a game. This year, every other game feels like they're going to lose because of the guys that they're missing.
Yeah, last year, even when the Niners were down, like you just felt like they were going to come back, right? And then we saw them do it in the 2 big playoff games, right? Down 10 to the Packers, down 21 or 24 to the Lions. That was one game, I'm not going to lie, I was like definitely not feeling good about it at halftime because they just hadn't shown anything in the first half that, made me feel like it was going to happen, but wasn't surprised when they ended up coming back to win, right? Because we know what that team's capable of. This year, it's been, like you said, the opposite. Not even every other game. It's been every game where you just don't feel good about it, right? Because they've struggled to close out games. Even though they survived Dallas, they almost blew that game toward the end too, right? So thankfully, they were able to hang on. But that's going to be the key thing too, right? Is closing out games and having Christian McCaffrey back, having Feliciano back, protecting Purdy and opening up those running lanes, and then having Greenlaw back, having Hufanga back, all these guys, your veterans, your your Pro Bowlers, your all NFL players. They're going to make a huge difference. So I'm definitely optimistic about the second half of the season. I would love to see Brock Purdy continue to elevate his game for sure too. Rack up those wins, rack up the stats too, and just continue to shut up the doubters. Prove to everyone that you are a $60 million a year quarterback. So
for sure,
now's his chance too, and getting his guys back will definitely be good. And me, I'm also a big fan of Ricky Pearsall, so I'm excited to see how they get him more and more involved in the offense. He had a really good game against the Cowboys. I think he had about 70 or 80 total scrimmage yards, including that big 39-yard jet sweep run that he had.
Huge.
So it's going to be exciting to see how they use him more too. I think this bye week couldn't have came at a better time for the 49ers. 4-4 team that was struggling, dealing with injuries, physically drained, mentally drained. They get a little reset, and hopefully we'll see a Christian McCaffrey on the field on Sunday.
For sure. I think we will CMC. We will see CMC on the field on Sunday. I think all the suspense has built up to obviously being in like after the bye week kind of situation.
Mm-hmm.
The schedule couldn't be any easier for the next couple of games, obviously against the Seahawks and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, but I'm excited. I think this team can do really good things. I think that, they got punched in the mouth in the first half of the season, and it's because they didn't have all their horses to start the season. And, getting Christian McCaffrey back, it's a huge boost for the offense. I'm telling you right now, they're going to finish top 3 in the red zone in terms of offense to finish the season. And if they can get Dre Greenlaw back, I want to say week 11 or week 12, probably after that Bills game, we're in good shape for sure. 6-2, man. That's what I'm predicting on the second half of the season. So let's see what happens.
Yeah, I won't doubt that for sure. And we'll keep an eye on how the Niners climb up that ranking of the red zone offense. Let's see. Right now they're 28th. Let's see if they can get to that top 5 mark by the end of the season with the guys coming back. That would definitely be a huge improvement. And if that's happening, chances are they're winning a lot of those games, and they do go 6-2, if not better, if they get into that top 5 category. So let's see what the Niners can do. 4-4 record, reinforcements on the way, and it's going to be a stressful 9 games for the Niners. But let's hope we're getting more wins than we did in the first half of the season. So for Aman, I'm Sandeep. This is the Deep Dive. We will catch you guys next week following the Niners game against the Bucs, and hopefully we'll be talking about a win and a Christian McCaffrey season debut as well. Thank you guys all for watching, and we will catch you guys soon.
Thanks, guys. See you later.